here's what happened. I was doing a bunch of different stuff in my day, and then I checked my phone and I got a message. And I had to make a decision of, do I keep doing what I was doing before checking my phone, or do I reply back to this message and take that time to focus in on it? That decision is a decision that I know hits for you, where there are a lot of those moments. It could be the phone with the message, or it could be another interruption where you are walking around the house and you notice the dishes that still have not been cleaned that are in the sink. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, am I going to put this off for another day? Or it could be all the clothes that's laying around in the bedroom. And you're like, do I take all this and actually put it in the laundry basket and then take it and do the laundry now? Or do I put it off again? Those decisions, all of those, can cause us to use energy and effort. And what I want to get into is the impact that this has and what you can do for tackling these tasks head on for when it comes to reducing that stress and building momentum. And it may really surprise you, because it did for me. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. Before I get into it, I want to acknowledge that you're taking the time to be here. I do not take that for granted. I want to be able to deliver for you with that. And you may be in a situation right now where you are dealing with the multitasking myth. I thought this was the way to do it, but I'm just feeling more mentally overloaded, more physically exhausted, and you feel like you are headed towards that one-way ticket to burnout. I do not take that lightly for where you're at. I have been there. I understand that feeling of that overload and that chronic exhaustion that can build, and that fatigue. I mean, they're both pretty much the same thing, but it's the fatigue that leads into that just exhausted feeling. So I get you. And what I want to let you know is that you came to the right place. I'm going to dive into it. But before, what I want to let you know is, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe and follow the show for the latest episodes. My commitment to you is a few for that. One is to continue to grow this show. And by you subscribing and following, that's going to help with that commitment. The second I'm going to go through a list here. I will be second, third, fourth. So what else is, I want to continue to get better as a storyteller for you. Better as a researcher for the information I'm gathering and I'm sharing with you here, and a better interviewer for the questions I ask the guests that are coming on to share their insights. And then to continue to focus on being honest with you. This is one that I haven't shared recently. I mean, I kicked it off for this podcast on that being a commitment, but I feel like every time I do this, I don't highlight this as much as I've wanted to, which is that honesty. Like, this is the truth of my own personal experiences, of the information that I'm gathering, and I'm sharing it with you. And that online, because I feel like I need this reminder sometimes. So that's why I really want to focus in on this, is that, you look out there and you see this one side of life where it's like the empowering transformation, awesome, life-changing things that happen, which is amazing and incredible. But there is another side of this behind the scenes that helps you get to that point. And that is the putting in the reps, the showing up when no one's watching, the taking the time to connect back to yourself and your body, and to be able to give yourself grace in those really hard moments where you get off track. Because I go back to, perfection doesn't exist. No one is perfect. You are not perfect in showing up to put in those reps. You're going to have those off days. And that is natural. Life happens. And you get hit with those challenges. And there is going to be natural resistance that comes up from the body. And what I want to share, what I'm going to be sharing with you, and what I want to remind you of, is that you're not going to like some of the things I'm going to share with you today. You're just not. Okay, I didn't like it when I got first started. If you like it, you were one of the lucky ones. But it goes back to doing things that you don't like in order to go towards loving who you become. Because you're not always going to feel like it for putting in the reps, for showing up, for doing this type of work in order to avoid burnout. It is going to take effort. It is going to take energy to be able to move towards making burnout extinct. I'm not here to try to hide that from you. But what I want to tell you is that you're absolutely capable of this as a human being, to move through the resistance. And what's interesting is you may actually start to like it as you're moving through the resistance. I started to like it, and now it's like I really like it for who it is I'm becoming. The person that I love in that version of who I am becoming, and then honoring and loving all the other versions that have got me to this point. So you may like it. I'm just here to tell you that after you start putting in those reps, but you are capable to be able to move through that and move towards who it is you want to become, to be able to show up for your burnout proof habits and put in those reps. So I appreciate you for being a part of it. Let's dive into it. For today, what I want to talk about is this myth that can be out there of the multitasking. And there's arguments all over the place with this, right? You have, you can multitask. You think of driving and then talking to someone in the car. I mean, those are two different activities that are going on. Then you have the argument of, the body is switching really rapidly, task switching back and forth for your attention. And then there's the other argument where there's no way that you can simultaneously have two tasks that you're working on that are taking high amounts of effort from your body and your consciousness in order to perform those to the best that they can be performed for productivity and efficiency. So you get into like the single tasking thing. This is like I'm gonna kind of rush into all those things and kind of brush through them. Yeah, I guess brush, like move through those, right? And cut through all that noise. And I want to simplify some things for you, okay? And bring some common sense into this thing to help you out, to understand what is going on in the body when it comes to putting tasks off. And then I want to get into my own personal experiences of having tackled these tasks head on, and then this process that I want to share with you that you're going to be moving through as you start this journey when it comes to overcoming the overload. So where you start isn't going to be where you end up. That's an important reminder. And then the other one is the more you understand this stuff, the less scary, the less intense, the less overwhelming that this can feel. And then clarity forms for, okay, what are the next actions that you're going to have to take? And I do want to start it with a quote from a mentor of mine, John Butcher, which is that there is no one right way, but there is a right way for you. And so this is a process to figure out what is going to be that right way. Some things you may have to tweak and change a little bit as you're going. But let me get into it first for what's going on for the body when it comes to connecting back to burnout. In your day, you're going to be hit with challenges. So things are going to come into your attention. And how I like to think about this for the body is that, what you're looking at and seeing and noticing, it reminds me of, if you're a fan of the Lord of the Rings, it reminds me of the Eye of Sauron, which is just this eye where Sauron would look and then, notice what's going on in that area and would see. So for you, your body is taking in all things that you're seeing, even if you don't realize it consciously. Like it's gonna hit your awareness. So what happens is that you can look at your phone, you can see the message, and then you can be like, I'm gonna get to that message a little bit later. But then thinking back to common sense, yeah, you may not be consciously thinking about it, but your body still realizes that there is something that you have to reply to for a message. And this brings it back to like way back for us as human beings, because what that could represent back then is this saber-toothed tiger, a threat that you were having to deal with in the moment. That is where you get a stress response, where it's going into that mode of, okay, I have this message from this person. Let's say it's a work message, but it's not urgent, but I know I have to get back to it. It's causing this stress to build up in me of like, how do I respond? What am I going to say? Okay, I'll put it off for a little bit later. And I'll deal with it. Okay. So that's kind of like a situation. Then you go back to your other tasks. What's happening though in the body is you've just created an open stressed loop. So with that can start to build in the body. That's where you get this bubbling sensation that builds up, even though you're not consciously focused in on it anymore, because the body's like, well, we're gonna have to address it at some point. Then it gets into the dynamics of, okay, well, this is someone, I'm a social, we're social creatures. So we don't want to, cause issues with the group. And so then you have that stress of like, okay, if I put this off for longer and longer and longer, that's going to potentially cause issues. And I don't then want to have issues with the group or the dynamics. And I want to feel like I'm belonging. Like those are all these messages that from way back when we were in small groups, those can be coming up without us even realizing it. And so that builds more and more that stress. And then we can get into, okay, you have this. Basically, you can think about it as like a decision that has to be made on the shelf, or like it's a thing on the shelf that you have to get done, right? And so then all of a sudden something else can come into your day where, let's say you have the dishes that are in the sink that you haven't gotten to yet. And so then that becomes something else that you're gonna have to get done. And then that list, the to-do list, starts stacking up, right? That is where we can get into hitting that mental overload and that fatigue where it's like, okay, I got so much stuff I got to get done, but like I'm focused on this one thing. So what has really helped me in moving forward is that what happened, well, actually I'll provide context. Because if you're not addressing all those different tasks that you got to get done and you're just constantly putting them off, that is just stress that is building and building and building. And it's not a thing to like create pressure for you. I don't want that to come across of like, oh, now you're making me feel like pressured of having to get all this stuff done. It's not that. What I want to help show you is where you can maximize your effort and your energy. And that's really important. Okay. So that goes back to this process that we're on. Okay. So I do know that you might be feeling that pressure and be like, I got to do all this stuff. So I want to take a moment to pause. And I want to tell you that this is a process that we're on. So what I came to realize was there's a different messaging that's out there. I feel like it's gone on this wave for what to do. That is to, put things off, right? Time block is the example. Let me time block for when I'm going to check emails, time block for when I'm going to get work tasks done, for like the big projects, time block for when I'm going to connect with family or my partner, and you time block everything, right? It depends on where you're at, okay? In your journey. And context is really important here to reflect back on your life. But let me share with you my own experience, and you can notice if this resonates. So for me, I then jumped to that, right? I jumped to that level, which I feel like is a level ahead of what I'm going to share with you for tackling these tasks head on. So I jumped to that and I try to time block things. But then what happened was life happened. I got hit with like another challenge that was unexpected. I think of like work was one that came up, or even my partner, like when we were trying to figure out, hey, like we gotta go get groceries. Okay, let's go get groceries now because we have this time. We got a few other things going on for family that we have to, deal with, like, and especially the holidays. So like, okay, let's go do this. And then all of a sudden my work time blocks are like, or my time blocks in general are a mess. Like I can't stick with them. I just like, it's so hard for me to stick with them. I have so much resistance that comes out from the body, and I like scrap the whole thing. I toss it and I say, okay, I'm not going to do these time blocks. And then I'm back to where I started, right? Of putting things off, causing me to have that fatigue, the build up in my body, the mental overload. And then I'm going to get this breaking, this point of like, I got to do something. And then I'll have that intense day where I do like all the cleaning, clear out all the clutter on my computer or my phone, or get through all these messages and have to say, hey, sorry. It's been a few days or a few weeks. I'm just able to get to this now. And then you send that out to the people. And you get that intense amount of energy that you put out to get all that stuff done in the day. So what I want to point out is that by causing things to stack up, I then had to take an intense amount of energy, and it had to hit a certain point of pain for me to take care of all that stuff. And I actually then exerted so much more energy in having to deal with that than probably what it would have taken if I had just done it when it had come up for myself. Because then it became less friction, less intense in my body. Because it goes back to this big bubble that's building up in the body. And when it becomes that open loop, it builds over the days. So what I want to talk about is tackling it head on. And what I mean by that is in your day, when you have the message that comes through, respond to the message. Even if you're interrupting a flow in your work, respond to it. If you get an email that pops up on your screen, go to it and respond to it. If you see the dishes that are in the sink, go and clean those dishes. Interrupt what you're doing to clean them, get them done, and put them in. Then if it's the laundry, the clothes are all over the place, grab all the clothes, put them in the bag, take them, and put them into the washing machine. There's a few reasons why. One, it's going to feel like you're completing tasks, which can feel good. That can have that sense of accomplishment, achievement. You can celebrate afterwards. So that's where I physically celebrate, like scoring a touchdown or a goal, like, or however, whatever level of celebration you want to do. But I tap my shoulders, I raise my arms up and go, yeah, like, let's go. Hoo-ah. Like, let's do this thing. Like, let's keep it going. And I'm like, fuck yeah. So that can help then remind the body of you like to get these tasks done. There's another thing that happens. Your first few days of doing this could be even more chaotic and overwhelming, and can even feel like more of an overload and resistance. What I want to remind you of is that this is temporary. Where you start isn't going to be where you end up. By you feeling more intense in the day and having a more intense level, intense level of overwhelm, at the end of the day, this is where you can take a few minutes to reflect back on what are the decisions that you can make in order to change that moving forward. And I'm going to give you a few examples to kind of inspire you here. One could be, okay, I've been getting tons of messages coming in and emails coming in to my phone and my computer. Wait, do I have my notifications on? Well, of course, if they're coming up and showing up. Is there a way to turn those notifications off? So instead, I can go and check my phone, check the messages, check my email, and do it that way to then enter into that space. Okay, yeah, I can do that. Let me change that. When it comes to the dishes, okay, what happens for why they stack up? Well, I don't take the time to actually clean the dishes right after I'm cooking. Or actually, could I do that while I'm cooking? Because I have some downtime in between where I'm chopping up the veggies. I got the pan going on the stovetop, but then I have like a minute or two of just hanging out. Why can't I just, like, if I'm done with the cutting board, just go clean it? It takes me maybe like 2 minutes max, clean it, and then I come back as the food's still cooking in the pan. Then I don't have to worry about that or even think about that. It's done. That is where this process is heading, right? I hope that you're starting to realize what's going on here. By you having to deal with and tackle these tasks head on, you're going to realize and bring the awareness, going back to the Eye of Sauron with Lord of the Rings, you're going to realize the awareness of what's going on and what's happening. And then you can make the changes because you're conscious about it. So then you can be like, okay, I'm going to make sure I have this dedicated amount of time in the morning to focus on my high tasks and my high priority. But what has happened is when you're moving to then the time blocks, when you move into that phase of that step of the process, what's happening is you've done a few things for the body. You have put in a lot of reps of changing the pattern from what you're used to. So if you were used to putting things off constantly or saying you're going to get to it and then you don't, so you don't honor your commitments, you have now shown your body that you can honor your commitments. You have now shown your body that you don't put decisions off. You make those decisions and you take action on those decisions. So that has been a buildup of evidence to now help support you with something that's going to be going to take a little bit more devotion for you. Or if you think about it, discipline of like, okay, I now have this 30 minutes or an hour in the morning where no matter what challenges are coming my way, it's not going to be perfect. So not every day I'm going to be able to do this. But for the most part, I'm going to have this time for me to focus on a high priority task. And now I have the evidence for my body to show that I can do this, that I can change this pattern and have this a part of my life. And so when you do that, then you can look back on your day and review and say, oh, okay, this is where I could have, instead of having it at this time, like 30 minutes right after getting up from bed, maybe you do it like 45 minutes. Then you're able to start to get into the details of when is the timing for when I'm going to have this work time block. Maybe it's after breakfast or it's right before breakfast. And then you're building and stacking up this evidence so that when things that are coming unexpected and it causes you to get off track for one day, it doesn't then completely throw everything out the window and you totally forget about this stuff because you've built up all this evidence. So that's why going back to that first one of taking those tasks head on can create a lot of clarity for you for what is not working well, what is causing inefficiency for you and creating more effort. And then you can make those changes and then that can move into then time blocking could be an example of what you try to do. Maybe it's specific days where you do certain things on certain days, but you've stacked up a lot of reps to get to that point where you've caused your body to notice the changes in the patterns. And when it comes to facing things head on and taking those tasks and closing those loops, that reduces then the stress, because you're not keeping those stress loops open and building over time. Where then that can be similar to, like, going back to Lord of the Rings, like Frodo and Sam, who have the ring of destroying the Sauron. Then you're going to actually notice them traveling. Notice the signals from your body that you're headed towards hitting burnout, and then you can change your behavior because you're creating this awareness of, you're not just all over the place and everything's disorganized, but you're actually seeing things and noticing the patterns for yourself. But starting small and then celebrating those small wins will lead you into the big wins and the big action that you can take. And it goes back to, where you start isn't going to be where you end up. But this habit of tackling those tasks head on is going to then be able to change your perspective on who you are. It's going to build trust within you of honoring your commitments, and then the celebration that comes afterwards of reminding your body that you want more of this. And then for your decisions, for the decision fatigue, you're able to reduce that by getting these decisions done, taking the action, and then you're creating a path forward for how you can change how your day looks, how your week looks, and then reminding yourself that perfection doesn't exist. So you will get off track. You will get resistance that comes up from the body, but you can remember that is natural. And when you can have that reminder that it's natural, it then becomes a lot easier to get back on track, either the next day or it might be another day that it takes. But you're going to be able to get back on track and then improve, learn the lessons, and continue to move forward. I'm fired up for you. I want to keep it simple as that, of tackle these tasks head on. You're not going to like it at first. It's going to feel, it may be even more overwhelming and chaotic for those first 2 days, but then remembering it's temporary for that phase. And then each night at the end, or whenever you have that time to reflect, you can even do it in the moment, you can change for the next day for that action and make it small and show up and put those reps in. And then continue to make changes and continue to move down that path. And then you figure out what's going to be the next action that you're going to take. Is that the time blocks? Is that something else? And then you're building this foundation for yourself of making permanent changes in your life. And that's where it can get so exciting, for the doors that open up for possibilities for you of what you thought and you dreamed of. And like, maybe someday this will happen for your life. That could then come into reality for you. And then all of a sudden now you get to dream even more of what's possible for you, because you've noticed what the reality looks like and the evidence that's been built up for you. And it doesn't happen overnight. I want to remind you that this is going to take that time to put in those reps, but it's to remember where you're headed and where you're moving towards. And in your day-to-day, by making those changes, you're moving towards making burnout extinct for your life. And that fucking fires me up for you. And if you haven't heard it yet, I believe in you. You are capable of this as a human being. You have the capacity within you to tackle these tasks head on, to notice the changes that can happen, make those changes, to continue to improve this over time, to remember this is temporary and where you start is going to be where you end up, and then to celebrate those small wins because they lead to the big wins. You got this.